Hello, and welcome to the Stacking Dingers Show. I'm your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. You can find me on Twitter at D4RKSH33P underscore. And you can subscribe to this show on stackingdingers.com for the Substack and any other work that comes out through this little brand that we have. Tonight, joining me is Brendan, Too Much Tuna, head of MLB info at Underdog, writer at Baseball Prospectus, and his own personal various Patreons and Substacks. Welcome, Brendan.
Thanks for having me. That was a delightful little jingle to play at the beginning. It was very relaxing.
Yeah, it's a little bit long, but shout out to my friend Jacob from who I've known since like fourth grade that came through on a little jingle.
No, that was great. I love that.
All right. I haven't missed anything. You don't have any more titles or places since we last talked. Have you added anything new?
No, if anything, it's been tougher. Like I joke about this all the time, but in many ways, I prefer the off season for baseball because it just gives you a chance to really, dive deep, spend a whole afternoon on a single player, and not have everything change. Whereas I feel like to do that on a Tuesday afternoon, at least in my world, with how sensitive I am to MLB news, just kind of like doing that for a job, everything just feels so magnified. And April especially is just it's just so much new information all at once, and it's hard to juggle. And I feel like doing the show with you tonight is kind of the first real chance where I'm taking a little bit of a step back, reflecting what we've seen, projecting what we might see going forward, and things of that nature.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, the seventh inning stretch tournament is open on Underdog Fantasy, which is the in-season best ball tournament. We're not going to really. This isn't really a breakdown of that, but that starts in 5 weeks or so, and then runs for there's a 4 week period, and then you go right into the playoffs. So it's a really short, much shorter contest. But tonight we're sort of just looking at what's happened so far. Just kind of open conversation between the two of us, and yeah, we haven't talked since the end of draft season. So I'm interested to see what we get into.
Definitely. Yeah. I know one of the things that we joked about just offline is, some regrets or mistakes we feel we made during draft season. I feel like those stick with you the hardest more than, what you got right.
Yeah. Like I can think of like one thing feel like I got right. And so many more that I got wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is we're on such, we talk about sample sizes all the time. And right now, we're a month and a half into the season, and it feels significant. But if you look at like, previous seasons where guys were at this point in the season, it can change in, 2 months.
I think one thing that I've learned just from playing fantasy baseball for a number of years now is I really hitters, especially, I give through May. As like a established veteran hitter who's not dealing with an injury, I just don't even change my opinion until the end of May. Um, Marcus Semien a couple years ago, he had that dreadful start, and then he just turned it on in May. Yandy Diaz is someone I was looking at this April, and the stats were just horrendous. I'm getting worried. Are the Rays going to start platooning him? He always had trouble lifting the ball. Is everything just over now? He can't even get on base anymore. And now you look at May stats, and he's just normal Yandy Diaz. So the weather's always terrible in April. Guys, might have gotten to spring training late, dealt with something. Like I really do think for again, an established major league hitter who is not dealing with a known injury, you just got to give it through May. They get a 2 month grace period, I think, before I start worrying.
Okay. And I mean, in Roto, slightly different than Underdog, you can react in season, and this tournament is basically our one way on Underdog. Unless you're playing dailies, you can adjust your priors on guys. But if you're more of the long tournament, this is your chance to start making those decisions on what's real and what's not, and uh, hoping you're right, because the thing with this tournament, starting still in like 5 weeks or whatever. Um, Probably should have looked that up before we started exactly, but there's still plenty of time that new information could come to light. Even like you said, guys' injuries we might not know about. Even at this point, they might be hiding something.
Yeah, and again, like Corbin Carroll is the obvious one who I don't know if he falls into that description that I had. Like Matt Olson is I know he's heated up maybe a little bit recently. I haven't looked at the exact numbers, but like he's one. He got off to a slow start, but I haven't changed my preseason expectation for Matt Olson like at all. Um, just because I have no reason to. He's in the prime of his career. He's still in a great lineup. Um, Again, and we don't know about an injury. Now, the Carroll situation is one where it's like, is the shoulder still bothering him from late last season? He's on my list to try to, just do this one of those deep dives on and try to really understand that shoulder injury at the time and what happened and how he performed in the playoffs and everything going on with that. But I would say he's the one that I react the most to. But again, there's a possible injury there as a reason.
Yeah, and you can go through the top, and if you look at ADP, uh, these guys. I'm surprised, like especially like Corbin Carroll he's still maintaining a pretty decent ADP. I feel like uh, with a few exceptions of like up and coming guys, that the field is actually kind of sticking to projections and preseason draft ADP more than you might expect. It's pretty sharp in a way.
I remember last year for the in-season tournament, Trey Turner was a guy who, again, fit this description. If he got off to that slow start last year, and he really fell in the in-season best ball tournament. I think he was like a third or fourth round pick, but in the preseason, he was like late first, early second, and those are the spots where I think it's best to stick to that preseason mindset. It's funny they set up some admin drafts. Numi set some up for the employees to do, and I'm in a bunch of the slow drafts and. I'm looking at my first round pick and seeing the ADP, and I still have in my brain like the exact order of ADP from the offseason and everything. So it's funny to like rewire your brain and be like, oh, now Ellie's up here, and yeah, Carroll stuck out to me as like still in the second, but someone like Vlad fell, a few rounds, which early on, that's meaningful because each round is so much more important at the beginning of a draft.
Right. It is interesting. The other thing that I've noticed with the early ADP is people have bought into infielder a lot more. I know we're not getting too deep into position strategies and stuff in this contest, but I think this goes along with the conversation of people changing their priors, in that like Bobby Witt, people are not taking an outfielder over Bobby Witt, even though the the projections remain the same. And Bobby Witt's hitting probably a ceiling type outcome that we knew was there, and like the what we know about Bobby Witt hasn't changed. We just know that he did it, and now people are like, oh, maybe I can take an infielder over some of these outfielders.
Yeah, baseball gets really tough for me because in like football, youth, you're just going from year one to year two can be such an explosion. Just like in football, it just relies so much like on athleticism, and in baseball, it's you can sometimes get in trouble by just only betting on youth because uh, just understanding the strike zone and how pitchers are going to attack you. Like, that's something that takes years and years to develop. There's a reason why like a lot of baseball players prime historically speaking, is more like late 20s sort of thing. Um, but when you have guys like Bobby Witt and Gunnar Henderson kind of, quote unquote, making the leap in real time, that's something I'm always wanting to react to. It's a little bit pricier. Like I thought, heading into the season, and, this was something that's really hurting me in my drafts, but like Tristan Casas and Royce Lewis were two young players who I felt like weren't being priced correctly, whether because they were infield or it was their injury stuff or we just hadn't seen it before. But trying to, get in early on players before they make that leap is something that's always an interest of mine in fantasy sports and sports, investing in sports cards and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, Bobby and Gunnar are two that really stand out to me in that regard right now.
Yeah, two things to go from there is the first being the some things that have kind of bit me in the butt in the youth buy-in is the sophomore pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was heavy on Bobby Miller, heavy on Grayson, heavy on Hunter Brown. Um, you know, with that youth, the second year breakout sort of uh, idea because we had conversations that all those guys got good amounts of volume last
Mm-hmm.
year, so we feel pretty comfortable their volume level this year. Hopefully, we get the skills increase, and that has been a mixed bag. Two of them have had significant time missed due to injury, and the other one, Hunter Brown, I don't know what to say about him.
Yeah, he's had some bulk appearances out of the bullpen that could get a win that way still, but no
Yeah,
quality start. The
it
pitching has been really funny up front with, Scooble is a guy, a lot of people are skeptical of, and he hasn't done it that long. Is he an injury risk? And I mean, he's just like hit the ground running. Reagan's doesn't look like he's missed much of a beat. So but then the guys who people were a little more trustworthy of, or at least I was, like again, Bobby Miller, Grayson. Um, they've been the ones that have had the injury issues, at least so far.
Yeah, the most frustrating thing with Hunter Brown for me is like I have so much for him, so I'll be watching it. He'll give up like get six guys on base in a row, and then he'll strike three guys out. Just like, why couldn't you do more of that? Or why are you? I don't know. Uh, I haven't seen anybody really. I mean, I don't consume a lot of analytical content in season. I don't know if you've seen anything specifically on Hunter Brown and what's going wrong there.
Not as terms of a deep dive that I've done yet. I did the other day do a little mini article on Substack about just some pitchers due for positive regression, and it's funny. Like nowadays, there's so much analysis about Stuff Plus and Baseball Savant metrics, and I remember, I think it was like on Rates and Barrels a year or two ago was just talking about how like sometimes you got to get back to like quote unquote the fundamentals and just look at BABIP and left on base rate. And I do find that like people don't do that much nowadays anymore. So I just looked at some pitchers who had like some outlier. If you just go to like Fangraphs 2024 season leaders and just sort by batting average on balls in play, and then sort by left on base rate and just look for outliers. I think that's a great way to kind of rewire your brain. And so like if you do that for some luck based metrics, like if you do something like ERA minus FIP, Hunter Brown's probably going to pop there because the ERA is like so outrageous. But also with him, like he that was his thing last year, is that the ERA was higher than the underlying metrics. And once you start to build a longer sample of that, it becomes tougher to buy into just being quote unquote luck.
Yeah, yeah. And last year we kind of hand waved it away as the increased workload was the issue towards the end of the season. But he's come out weak to begin with.
My favorite example, and he did have a good start the other day, and I've tweeted about him a couple times though, is Mackenzie Gore, who just had this, he's continuing to get better with the strikeouts and walks. And he's been running like close to a 400 BABIP this season. And again, he's had a tough schedule as well. And that to me is just, someone I'm clearly, wanting to buy because some of the underlying skills have him as like a top 20 overall starting pitcher this year.
Yeah, he is on my list of six or seventh pitcher targets
Mm-hmm.
at the end there because I don't especially in the shorter contests, I don't need him to be great for a whole month. I could just get two good starts out of him and it'd be a good boost to a lineup.
I think something else with pitching that I'm starting to understand more, and I really want to internalize this next year, and it makes sense the more you think about it. But it feels like every year there'll be a rash of injuries in spring training and then the very beginning of the season, and that was hard this year. Like the Strider news, I remember sharing that on like a Friday night from the Underdog account, and then the next morning, and that was just like Strider's going to get an MRI, and then the next morning it was Shane Bieber, and it was that he already underwent TJ, and it was just like totally out of nowhere. And so like the pitcher injuries this year were, it hit fast and furious, but what we do see every season is in spring training and then the beginning of the season during this ramp up period, that's where the pitcher injuries are most prevalent. Now they still happen throughout the season, of course, but it's, when you look at it on like a scale of a graph that shows, when the injuries occur most frequently, it really is, March and April. It's that ramp up time when pitchers who haven't been doing anything all off season are just getting going. Once you're in season, you're in a little bit more of like a flow state. And so I say all that to say, like, I'm a little bit less worried right now about currently healthy pitchers going down than I was in the first 2 weeks of April, when it felt like, you're just trying to avoid the ticking time bomb.
Yeah, and it seems like we're already getting those guys back, like Grayson and other guys are, they're on their way back or have returned. We've got Taj Bradley back.
Framber came back quickly.
Yeah, and he's looked pretty good. So that is the other thing. The amount of time, I don't have the data, but I would guess that the amount of times that the injury is serious and they'll be out long term more than just like miss a couple of starts is more likely in that ramp up period.
Yeah, again, and that was the thing, is like when all the, it was Bieber, instantly out for season. Like that really sucked. And then it would be Pavetta elbow issue, Grayson elbow issue, Framber. But then a lot of those guys came back within, a short amount of time. So that made a big difference too.
Yeah, it is. I think I feel this way every year, but like already looking at some pitching staffs, like each week, I'm like, I don't know who 2 out of these 5 guys are right now on some teams. Which I don't think that's a place to attack though. The way I've been thinking about it is, or I guess this is an on the cuff observation as I'm saying this, so maybe it's not right, but a lot of these guys that we don't know just kind of are up and down for the season. Like, and definitely maybe this is something to think about next year too, is how deep into how deep into the bench do we need to go, or is it safe to go on certain teams? Like how deep into the AAA, AA guys is valuable, because like most of the guys come up for a start, then they go back down, and somebody else comes up for a start, and then after that, the guy that they were replacing comes back after a couple of weeks. So it's interesting.
And we haven't, that's something that's been different than last year. Is last year, it was boom, Bryce Miller, Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, Mason Miller. These guys were coming up. It felt like there was at least one per week last season. And we have not had that impact this season. Obviously there's been Skeens and Jared Jones started the year in the rotation. And I'm trying to even think who else. Christian Scott was the big one who did come up. And, but we haven't had that from the pitching side, that, the young starter reinforcement that everyone's getting excited about. And again, yeah, prospects on the hitting side is a whole nother story too, is, I think that's been a defining theme of this season, especially for a lot of ambitious best ball drafters. And I include myself in that, who is chasing some Wyatt Langford steam leading up to opening day.
Yeah, I'm still adding him. He's he was looking like he was due for the breakout still this year, based on what he like. The results weren't there, but the underlying stuff seemed good for him.
I think the one who best fits this description for me is Cherio. I just think we as a collective, whether it's, fantasy players or baseball fans or whatever, like we just got a little bit of ahead of ourselves. Like with how quickly some of these guys have been moving through the minors the past few years. And yes, there's been a ton of advancement with player development. You don't need someone to sit in the minors for like 6 years after you draft them nowadays. But I mean, when you look at Churio's just his age and then his minor league production historically, it was lacking to no fault of his own, but he just like didn't have a lot of experience. I feel like even Bobby Witt, he had a season where he spent the entire year at AAA before he came up, and it just felt like some of these guys, whether it was Churio, whether it was Holiday, that they could have benefited from that. And I think we just started jumping the gun on some of them. Now it's not to say that they aren't going to make a lot of improvements, and maybe Churio gets crazy hot in the playoffs for best ball this year. That I'm not putting that out of his range of outcomes, but I think our initial expectations, probably do need to be adjusted. And there is a difference between, Wyatt Langford, who is, college ball and had some ridiculous minor league success last year, versus someone like Churio, who's a little bit more projection, with his ultimate ceiling and everything. But again, it doesn't seem to be getting any better with some of the rookies who have, come up into the season, even like a Kyle Manzardo, for instance.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think Langford and Churio still have good team context in terms of being able to struggle even um, more this year and still stick around. Just because the Brewers, like, their depth is just like Joey Weimer's much worse than Jackson Churio. So there was a period where like Churio sat for like 3 days in a row, but he's back. He doesn't have a good lineup position. He's still getting platooned, but uh, to me, observing the team, it doesn't feel like he's really in contention to be sent down.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, and yeah, they're gonna give him runway and everything. Yeah, I think I'm just talking especially about our initial expectations as fantasy players, and I don't think it should swing too far the other way next year. But as long as people know the bet they're making, because I think with baseball, the past 3 years, we are seeing even the top prospects need a little bit of adjustment time. And then it's almost one of those things, like sometimes I actually prefer them to get it right away, because if they don't get it right away, then Colton Cowser this year started red hot. Okay, pitchers are now adjusting. Now he's got to adjust back. So it feels like you're never getting a smooth ride with a rookie hitter in MLB right now.
Yeah, but the thing for me this year, buying into those guys a little bit more than I had in past years, is just uh, you know paying attention to the ceiling outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And you
and
want that production late. Like Gunnar, he started slow last year and then he came on late. Casas, started slow, came on late last year. And that's what you want. Like you want your rookies to be surging um late in the season, and that's where all the money is.
right, yeah. So accepting risk. And we got to get into it. We kind of danced around a little bit. The Ellie De La Cruz conversation needs to be had, because that piggybacks on this. Uh, the what do you get if you're right, sort of bets, and what versus when you're wrong, what happens. So he's obviously been a topic of conversation in the couple of live drafts that I've done, and various plenty of people that were in on early are very happy. Good for them. Uh, we were on the critical side of things. We'll say that the nice way. Kind of across the board here at Stacking Dingers contributors, we're all kind of not buying in, and so I maybe this is coping, but I still feel like I let me say it this way. I feel like I knew the risk that I was taking, and that I'm not regretting it so much as I'm accepting it, because I don't think I was blind enough to think that this wasn't a potential outcome.
Yeah, and I went through like a couple spells of Ellie during the off season where at one point I was just, especially from like my roto leagues, I was like, gotta get him no matter what. The stolen base upside alone is just gonna make it worth it. And then, at other times I was really hesitant. And then I put out a tweet recently where I was said like my best performing best ball team is an Ellie team. And he's someone who I was fading all off season. And then like the last couple weeks, I was like, I should probably, and Strider was another one where it was so this isn't to be, like, oh, like I came around on Ellie and was right sort of thing because I did the same thing with Strider where it was like these were guys I was fading all off season with best ball, and then in the last couple weeks I was like, let me just get some, and yeah, I don't want to write the. I don't think we've seen the full story of Ellie because he's again going to be one of these guys who's going to go through some of these ebbs and flows where there have been some quieter weeks. He's the loud weeks are really loud,
Right.
and then but I'll just see a random stat, oh, he's 3 for his last 27 or something. And so I do kind of want to see where it lands, but I think his preseason, ADP was something that in hindsight was, very worth it. And I do think from everything I've seen, he should be a first round pick for the in-season tournament. Because, like spike weeks in the playoffs, like his could be, as loud as anyone. And so, yeah, I do think it's worth it. And he doesn't have he's doing this without the lineup protection and just a deeper offense than what we were expecting. They've actually had one of the worst offenses in the league, even despite Ellie's, great production.
Yeah. The thing I do think that I was wrong about is not understanding the floor of him.
With the
I
steals.
with the steals. So even when he's in that 3 for 10 or 3 for 20, he's got gets 2 steals on those 2 singles or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think steals are tough to um, wrap your head around with, best ball point scoring format because they're so valuable in roto. And then when you hear points, it's like, okay, yeah, steals are nice, but
then you're getting
when
2 for each
yeah.
time
When
he's
people
on
are
base.
hyping up, JT Romuto and Roto because he steals bases for a catcher, it's like, I don't care about that in points. But I think it does matter when you get 73 from Ronald Acuna. And if you're going to get 80, 90, 100 from Ellie, like that matters. So it doesn't matter if someone steals 5 bases versus 10 bases. But when we're talking these, on the extremes, I think that does matter for points leagues even.
Yeah, and we're still in a era of not knowing how the rule changes are going to affect players and steals. Like who's going to get more steals? Like who's the teams that are going to do it more? We're definitely in a changing environment of that. It's hard to know exactly. People are going to guess, but we don't know exactly the conditions of the league or the team or the players right now.
There's one I I'd come across a stat in the off season, and it's had to do a lot of math for it, like download all the numbers from Baseball Reference and make a sheet with it. But it was just like number of times that you attempted a steal while you had the opportunity, like the base was empty in front of you, like whatever, like and Ellie's rate last year in the half season was just off the charts. And that's why like I had this one point in the off season where I was like, oh, for Roto, like this stolen base thing, like if this is sticky and he runs this much, like I think he stole 30 bases in like half a season last year. And that was with when he was like struggling for a lot of it. And when I saw like that's what I'm kicking myself that I didn't lean farther into that. And that's not an easily accessible stat. And so it's just like something I haven't seen talked about enough, but it's I want to do that again this off season. But I know we were talking before about just like the points leaders. I forget where does Ellie rank just among the
Oh, well, let's
um,
let's transition into that. We do have
highest scoring players right now.
uh, we have. Let me get that there. All right, so this is a nice little Streamlit tool. I will put the link to this in the show description, but this is done by um, Aiden. I'm not sure his last name, but he is on Twitter at Tiston. I never say it. It's all the Detroit teams smashed together. He is he was part of the Best Ball Data Bowl last year that um, Pete helped host over on his show and stuff, and he's a good follow. He puts out different stuff for different sports, so check him out. But this is a tool that he's put together that he's been manually updating, and this is a list of points scored so far. It has you can look at full season up to the last update of his data point, or you can look at who's scoring week to week. If you want to look for outliers there that you're surprised by, but we're going to stick mostly just to this full season. So yeah, Ellie is number 4. Basically, not too pretty much the same as Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt, in terms of points scored so far.
It's funny how many I've looked at this, and yeah, this is an incredible resource. I'm glad, So you said Aiden was his name, right?
Yeah, Aiden. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So definitely deserves like a huge shout out. I think I had retweeted it when I came across it. But it's like really cool, and I've poked around it. I got to do more of it, but just this is one of like my first times, really just staring at the names, and it's funny how many infielders are up here at the top.
Yeah, and actually, let's take pitchers out of this. We'll look at them separately. Get back in here. So yeah, right now it's sorted on points scored, and then there's a column for ADP. Yeah, the obviously the standout names here in this top area in the top 10 by ADP at least is William Contreras and Alec Boehm. One of these I was very right on, and one of these I was very wrong on in draft season.
William is just he's just unbelievable. He had several more RBIs tonight. He is incredible, and the only thing I just want to mention quickly about him is that he is an exception to the rule of like catchers on Underdog in the weekly format, because he does not get days off, and he always hits first or second. Like he doesn't get he gets way more playing time than other catchers.
Yeah, and the Brewers, the way they have him, I mean, it is an interesting conversation to have, like looking at this season and the JT Realmuto season from a couple of years ago, and basically these guys can fall off pretty quick in terms of production. Like I don't want to denigrate JT Realmuto, but there is the added wear of putting up these sort of volume type seasons as a catcher that maybe we need to chase them less and try and find the guy who has the opportunity for playing time instead of the guy who had previously had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, this was, I think, just I don't think William will be this cheap again. I think he's going in like the 3rd round or something in season.
Yeah, he's definitely out of where I'm taking him, because I don't, as much as I love it as a Brewers fan, I don't know that he it seems unlikely to keep up exactly this.
Now another tying a couple things together here. What we were talking about is it better to from this point on just kind of stick to those preseason expectations and maybe blend that a little bit with what we've seen so far, and how do you put an injury input into something like this? But like again, these are just like employee drafts, so it's might not be what's actually happening out there, but like I got Ronald Acuna at pick like 5 and one time, and I got him at pick 6 another time, and it's just he's probably like the biggest test right now of how strongly do you stick to that preseason conviction, because for some people are saying it's like unfair if you get the number 1 pick too many times, and and now you have a chance to get him in the top 4 or 5 picks, and that's not even happening 100% of the time, and it's been 6 or 7 weeks only. So he's someone I'm really thinking about, like where he should slot in, for the in season tournament.
Yeah, the question there is his knee. How much is that contributing to it? I think that there is an injury question there, um, to me. But the first I got into the first draft, and Numi had kind of set some ADPs, based on scoring so far and such, when this contest opened. And I did get a 101. I took Otani first in
Mhm.
that first draft just because, the it's just he's it's ridiculous. I didn't realize Kyle Tucker was so close to him in scoring,
He
which is
homered again tonight too.
okay. So that definitely, uh, I got the Jordan over Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker was a guy who, I've always been in on last couple of seasons, and I feel I'm pretty disappointed so far in Jordan. Um,
I forget what's the there was a stat like what's his career high in homers? It's like 37 or something. It's like not that. I have to double check there. Maybe he's only gone over 40 once, but it feels like we're going to be waiting on his, dream season for at least another year here.
yeah, and he is a guy that I looked into. You just sort of those basic luck statistics, and comparing, outside of some of the power numbers not matching,
Yeah,
uh,
he's never hit
the
40 homers.
the ISO isn't really matching, his stuff. But it seems like, the exit velocity and everything seems like to match. So I'm still not I'm still taking Jordan, where he's going. But obviously, so far it's been a disappointing, one of those decisions I made a lot during draft time.
I think one thing just to close off this top group here is with Tucker and the in-season tournament and everything is I remember last year, and this is something to do more when it gets closer to the tournament actually starting, but for when we're drafting in January and it's for the entire season, you just don't know how guys are going to show up. Are they going to be in that mode where they're having a career year? Are they kind of just trying to get by and everything? And like last year, I remember, um, for in season, Freddie Peralta was someone who he had gotten off to a slow start, but he was starting to get on a roll as the tournament closer and closer to starting. And you kind of want to run with that when a guy gets on a roll in season. Kind of comparing it back to that, brief point I made about like pitcher injuries, about how at this point we're kind of in, guys are rolling right now. Kyle Tucker does look like he's having, a career year. I'm not positive I buy him, over Soto and Judge moving forward, but he's like a firm, middle of the first round guy
Yeah,
moving forward.
I don't think he's going over them either. Um, so the field still seems to somehow be, underselling Kyle Tucker. I think he'll always be that way. But I think, I don't know. We can pop down to this next group, because then we start getting more, uh, crazy names here. Jaron Duran, definitely someone I was wrong about. We saw him climb. There's some really good value early on him, based on his performing. Uh, Jerkson Profar is another interesting name here, and Salvador Perez, Michael Garcia. So there's definitely a Kansas City stacks out there that are pretty hot.
Yeah, the convo we were just having about William, there was definitely someone screaming into their whoever they're listening to this about like Salvi has always done it and he's as good as he's ever been.
Yeah,
So, but it just the greater point is just that like catcher is with this format where it's pitcher, infield, outfield. That catcher is the elite ones are worth it, but we don't want to be chasing the catchers who do well in part time playing time and situations like that.
yeah, and as much as people might be disappointed with Acuna so far, he's still here at 28. He's just
Mhm.
he's just outside of that top area. So, um, I feel like he's had a couple of stolen bases the last couple of games too, and that was kind of part of what was missing. Actually, power and the stolen bases weren't really keeping up to the expectation. But yeah, it seems like he's trending up. So I mean, obviously, people are still going to take him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the other thing I wanted to do is sort on just check out. We've sort of talked about a couple of these guys, but so this is now sorted on ADP.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into pitcher, let's look at this quick. And thanks to the wonderful color coding here, we can see that, we talked about Corbin Carroll. I guess I'd open up to you if you have anything to say about Julio Rodriguez so far.
I think Julio, everyone is just so comfortable with this slow start because it's what he did, last year sort of thing. And I think him and Trey Turner were the two guys who last year really spoke to me kind of about, how your points are distributed in best ball, because if you drafted Julio last year in round one, you weren't as likely to advance to the playoffs as you were for other first rounders. But if you did get to the playoffs with him, he went so nuts that it became this huge advantage. So it's one of those things that it could sometimes almost be better to get, a first rounder who underperforms, for most of the season. If you still get them through, it just becomes this hammer. And again, Seattle's always going to worry me. That ballpark sucks. There's a reason we're always so into they're good at pitching development, but they also get this boost from the ballpark as well. And the weather patterns there, are favorable to suppressing offense. And so, it's just not the same as if he had played in Cincinnati, for instance. But he's still, he did this last year, and until he doesn't do that again, I think most are going to rightfully trust him.
Yeah, I am though, like regardless of
It's
the
annoying.
outcome of this season, in one of my roto teams, I had like third pick, and it was between Julio and Bobby Witt, and I obviously took the wrong side of that coin toss. Yeah, so pop down here just a little bit more. That the second group. This is where some injuries start peeking in. Mike Trout, Luis Robert Jr., Christian Yelich missed some time. Ozzie Albies missed a little bit of time. Corey Seager hasn't missed. I guess he did miss a little bit, but there's still a lot of strong performances in here. It doesn't feel like anything was wrong in this top area as far as where we were spending to get guys. Maybe Austin Riley.
The Trout thing is, again, if we had done this, a month ago like that, he would have been probably the top story we led with, even over Ellie and everything. Because for a minute there, it looked like he's back. He's gonna steal bases and play the full season. And again, with him, it was like that knee thing came out of nowhere. It's always I learned this from doing like the Underdog MLB account when we share injury news. If someone gets hurt in a game and everyone sees it, and then we're just waiting for the official diagnosis, it's kind of just like, oh, okay. But when stuff comes out of nowhere, it just is, really is so different. And his knee operation just came out of nowhere. But I think the lesson that I took from him in his performance earlier this year, because the interesting thing about Trout is he's never actually been bad when he's played. When he misses time, but then he comes back and is instantly elite. So I would still be interested in. We don't have a timeline yet for this season, which is a little worrisome. So you don't have to go out and take Trout in every in-season draft you do right now. But once we do get a timeline and get close to the tournament starting, and then honestly, even heading into 2025, if his ADP is suppressed at all, I think he's someone that there's going to be missed time. Just if you do accept that, he's going to be someone I'm always going to be interested in betting on. And I kind of think this is a good format for him where, you just hope that you might get, that peak Trout during those playoff weeks.
Yeah, definitely both sides were right on Trout this year. the anti and the for both.
Mm-hmm.
He's still Mike Trout, and he showed us that he was running, and then injury came, and then all those people got the thing, and it's something something that says a lot. You can your take can be wrong and right multiple times over
Mm-hmm.
the course of a season, or even the course of a couple of seasons on a player.
Definitely.
All right, so let's take a look at pitching here. Let's get that up and sort by points or ADP first. What would you like to look at?
Yeah, let's look at points like we did for hitters.
All right. All right. So we have uh, the duo up at the top that we expected completely. We have Tyler Glasnow and Zach Wheeler there, top three, and of course, someone who I am way over the field on, and Seth Luke. I don't feel good about this because everything points to he's just like so overperforming. Uh, so I'm out on him going forward at the risen cost, and I'm just going to enjoy what I have of him already.
Yeah, I think the thing that underdog scoring, I we talked about this during the pitcher preview. We don't always talk enough about wins. It feels like we're always talking about strikeouts because in a single start, that can just like really boost your performance. But the wins thing mattered, and that definitely tempered that definitely kept down my expectations for him this year. And maybe that was a silly overthinking it sort of thing because his price was so affordable. But yeah, I'd be with you. I would, if you like your position right now, like I think it's sometimes okay to be like, I was right on this, I hit on it, I profited, I'm moving on.
Right, right. I'm surprised to see Tanner Houck up here. I did not that. I knew Ranger Suarez has been dominating, but I did not realize that. Obviously, I'm not following Boston as much as you probably are as a fan. So, what do you think on Houck going forward?
He's become one of my favorite pitchers in baseball. Again, the Red Sox fandom has a little bit to do with that. But I was completely out on him. There's been a couple of pitchers this year who just their thing was like, oh, they're so good against righties, but they just can never figure out lefties. Clark Schmidt of the Yankees was another who was like that, um, and yeah, so I'm really surprised by what's happened. And I'm trying to what's to say his ADP was there 230. Like I wonder how often he was drafted even because I was trying to dive into the late round pitching this year and I don't remember really ever even considering him.
Yeah, I didn't either. Um, let's see. We got Ranger Suarez is the other surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, feels like he's never had. He's always come into the season behind, and this was his first year coming into the season ready for the season. No passport issues or whatever injury. I forget the couple last years. He hasn't been starting on time, but definitely even these results I wouldn't expect. I don't know if you've done any uh, digging on him so far.
I haven't, but I did just come across a stat tonight that it's through 10 starts, he's got a 136 ERA, and it's the lowest by a Philly starting pitcher through 10 starts since 1916, which it just doesn't even feel real. But he's been incredible. I think it's a combination. Like he gets, above average whiff, above average ground balls, and he's just in a rhythm right now. Again, it's someone that I wouldn't be buying, at a crazy high valuation all of a sudden. Um, like if you think I'm just completely making this up, I don't know what their ADPs are, but like a Ranger Suarez versus Kevin Gossman rest of season sort of thing, where it's like Gossman's maybe been a little underwhelming. Like I'm pretty sure I'm still taking Gossman there, but again, that's the same thing we go into Lugo. If you happen to have a lot of Ranger already, be happy that you profited. If with a lot of guys like him, I like to kind of let like, quote unquote, my league or the market or my draft room decide for me. If everyone's skeptical, And this guy's been an outlier for so much this season. I'm willing to say, okay, let's run with it. But if everyone's buying in, then I want to, raise an eyebrow and say, I don't know about this.
Yeah, and Imanaga is the other one up here that is increased in cost, and that was another one that I'm very happy with my high exposure to him. Uh, just and that decision wasn't anything in knowing what he was going to be. It was just knowing that nobody knew what he was going to be exactly, and
Mhm.
that was a cost based decision. He's ADP is 122 here, but for the most of the main drafts, he was 140, 150. So um,
I, I think I recently like looked back at the contract, and it's kind of ridiculous. He has a little bit of more upside because he can opt out after a couple years, but the Cubs just got him for so affordable. And I remember when that was signed, I feel like the contract kind of changed people's expectations because that was made so much a big deal about Yamamoto. It's like, well, look how much the money they gave him. Like, this is the Dodgers. They know what they're doing. Like, he must be that good. And when Imanaga's deal came to light, and it just was, kind of one of those situations where there's all these opt outs and escalators, and it wasn't a huge commitment for the Cubs. I think that led a lot of people to underestimating him.
yeah. Speaking of Yamamoto, both he and Glass now are here in this top, I don't know, whatever 15 that we've highlighted. And this is pretty funny. The whole conversation around these guys, especially in best ball, is that
Mm-hmm.
they're never going to have 2 start weeks with the Dodgers, and it hasn't really made a difference here. They're putting up the scoring in single start weeks to um, you know compete with guys not in that situation.
No, definitely. That was the concern of mine, early in the year. So chalk it up to, another um, something that I would prefer to take back if I could.
Yeah. Um, Looking at the second group here, and this is a complete mixed bag here. Like we're getting like we have guys from all over, middle to end, I guess. ADP. There's not a lot of top guys here in this second little group that we're looking at.
I think a lot some of these names because like Hauk was from the first group was on this. Luis Heel, Garrett Crochet, Jack Flaherty was on that first list. All those guys to me um, are guys that are on my season long managed teams because they were perfect to take at the end of your draft. And if it doesn't work out, you just drop them. Whereas like in best ball, I personally the way that I draft would just be way too nervous about taking a zero for the season with guys like that, and therefore you don't have any of them. And I would say that these results, especially for like Heel and Hauk too, honestly, Crochet, there's I don't believe anyone who says they had this really in the range of outcomes for that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're all guys. If you're taking was just hoping they have a couple of good games.
Because even Crochet is risky for in Heel too. They're gonna have their innings restricted at some point this year, and if that comes in the playoff weeks, that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. I do think Crochet was a little undervalued when this seventh inning stretch contest opened. I haven't drafted. I guess I did draft yesterday, but he is on the rise. So I'm constantly kind of evaluating these guys. Because he's a great example. He's had a couple of great starts. I think he was pitching tonight, and he was off to a good start again. But that doesn't change the limiting risk. But people are going to see those starts and get more comfortable with the names
Mm-hmm.
as they have the consistency this season. All right, so let's do the other sort here. Let's go by ADP, ending ADP. So yeah, we have 2 big reds here. Not the team red, but the color red on the points. So we have pour one out, Spencer Strider. Um, you know, There's not too much to say, I don't think. I don't, because I don't really want to get into like trying to predict that sort of injury fastball. Like that's not in my ability to sound smart or like even know anything about. So I don't really want to get into that. But I think the thing that stands out to me here as we get into drafting the seventh inning stretch is we have all these. Basically, we have the whole market on pitching has come down in ADP. Everybody has it in the mind right now. The mindset is injuries are high risk, or pitching injury is a high risk decision. Um, we feel like we're getting underperformances from some of the early guys. Such, Pablo Lopez is a good example here, who is someone that we expected more out of him up to this point, but he was still in that like top two groups that we looked at in terms of points. So right now the field has dropped the ADP or increased the ADP of pitching in general. But to me, looking at this like first group, these guys are all still performing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, uh, just we're living in like a time where everyone is trying to ride kind of those young breakouts. Like, okay, here it's time for this player to become a household name and everything. And then you look around and Zach Wheeler is just a little bit boring, but like also very elite. And so that this kind of that top group there, guys like Burns, Wheeler, Castillo, um, Nola even is doing pretty well this year. And so like, and Gosman and Lopez, like I'm not Lopez, especially I'm pretty comfortable with moving forward. And so we kind of have this range where it's like last year, it felt like this group, the top 12 starting pitchers, everyone got hurt or did underperform. And the results have been, if you took most of these guys, you're pretty happy with where you're at right now. Yeah, Scooble is just incredible. I was a skeptic there, and he's come around. Kirby's been a little disappointing for me, but again, I still really like him moving forward. And I think the other thing with guys like Lopez, where it's been a little bit inconsistent so far, but his good starts have been really good. Is in best ball, like I'm totally fine with that. Like it's going to be so rare for a starting pitcher to hit your lineup every single week of the season. You just want that when they do hit it, that it's a really high point total. And that's where I feel like even though I've always shied away, from like high walk rate, high strikeout guys at times, like Dylan Cease, for instance, I'm starting to come a bit more back around on them, just understanding more about how the best ball scoring works and just knowing that when those guys do have those starts, I want them in my lineup.
Yeah, and going down to this next group again, we're seeing a lot of the guys that aren't in the green color are injury related. I mean, not Max Fried, but most of these guys, their failing is injury, and we're seeing still even Mitch Keller here, who nobody feels happy about having Mitch Keller, I don't think right now, but he has still put up a good score.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess like the guys at the very top, Wheeler those guys are up there. They're durable. They've been there for a reason. Until they aren't durable. Like Garrett Cole, like his whole thing was he's the safest pick in fantasy for pitching, and then all of a sudden he's not. But like, with guys like Bobby Miller and Grayson Rodriguez and some of them, like it's those guys got hurt and Reagan's hasn't and Scooble hasn't, but that doesn't necessarily mean like it was right or wrong. Like I feel like with pitching, and I feel this more in season long managed leagues, but like I am a little bit of the mindset of you want to overdraft pitching and then you just got to know a couple of them are going to get hurt. Now, if you're doing a best ball draft in January and guys haven't reported to spring training and you just don't want to take that risk, I totally get that. If anything, it might be optimal, in early offseason drafts to go hit more hitter heavy. And then when it's that final week before the season, all the guys have already had their elbow issues and setbacks. You do know who's healthy in the moment, come in, pretty strong on pitching. And that feels like to me like the most optimal way to diversify heading into a season. But
So I kind of have, I haven't fully fleshed out this thought, but my sort of, you know, mindset is, uh, let me say the field's mindset at this point is to devalue pitching as a whole, and even going to extremes of, just, the pitcher doesn't matter crowd, much like running back doesn't matter. Um, it's gotten to the point where with the whole ADP drop, you're making you're waiting 10 rounds even to start pitcher, and with the whole field shifting down, um, you like that still you're still getting good names, you're like the whole way through. So for me, the idea that I can get a pitcher pretty much at any pick, I almost just want to randomize it where
mhm.
I'm taking pitchers. Like, especially, because we see these top guys, they're, even if they're not performing top tier output, they're still doing good. And, the kind of the middle group of high performing pitchers came from all over ADP. And I don't think that changes for a whole season versus a part season contest.
Yeah, I think this off season we're going to have a lot more conversations just about like when to draft pitchers because we're going to have another year of data about like what people did and how that performed. Um, and again, I do think that's something to save for the off season. Um, but yeah, no, in general, pitching is always really interesting to discuss because of both like the high injury rates, um, but then also at the same time, some of the breakouts that, come out of nowhere.
Yeah. And just the consistency of the top end, the floor of the top end, is, I think, an interesting thing that gets lost.
I think that's something I want to look at more and I'll, be using this app that made to do so and everything, but like really understanding because in my head it's like, okay, why would I draft Tyler Glasnow so early if I could take Nestor Cortez late and his 2 start week is just going to beat Glasnow's 1 start week, and I devoted so much less capital to getting that. Like that makes sense. That can happen in this format. But I think that's something I want to start to understand more is kind of the stickiness of pitcher points, like start to start, and how often are 2 start pitchers hitting your lineup versus 1 start pitchers. And then even then, it's a little bit tricky because wins are worth 5 points, and that's just kind of
Random.
random and
Yeah.
everything. And so like I would want to correlate, pitcher points to just like strikeout rate. 'Cause that to me just seems like the number one thing to maybe look for. And that leads you to Scooble and Cease and Snell and Reagans and some of these riskier guys, but like in any given week they could go nuclear with a high strikeout performance. So there's still like, I guess it's a long way of saying there's like a lot of work to be done. I think around like the macro of it, this all. And I still think, one edge in all of this is like the individual player analysis of part of it. And yeah, I think that's going to be something moving forward. And I would not take Paul Skeens in the 4th round of the 7th inning stretch.
Yeah. And they're for me, it's volume there, but yeah. All right. So I think that's a good place to, I'm sure we could, pull out names and sit here and talk for a while, but I think we covered a lot. I don't know that we've put anything groundbreaking forward into drafting the 7th inning stretch, but I think this is a good point to analyze where you were at before, your thoughts, and kind of make a plan going forward. Just because right now, if you're drafting this contest, you're drafting without a lot of information that people are going to have uh, right before the contest. And
Hmm.
the way this in-season tournament usually goes is that it ends up a lot of people are chasing at the end when there's like some overlay potential. So you're going to be going up against a lot of late entered lineups. So I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I think that's right now is a place of reflection, uh, and start digging into this contest more over the next few weeks as we get more information.
Yeah, no, it was great to just, talk some baseball. And again, like I might not be in the right places for this, but something like a long-term hope of mine is that there are more conversations, that we don't wait until May 20th or May 21st to have like, our first, underdog best ball baseball, like how we feeling about things. Like I would hope that we get, more conversation about the format moving forward. But I also know there's other ways to, try to increase that. But if anyone, does have, other thoughts that maybe, was sparked an idea from what Matt and I were talking about, or you've already, talked about this on a podcast or in a tweet or an article or something, like definitely reach out, because I'd be curious to see it, because I know every now and then I'm thinking like, oh, I wondered, like, this is something I think about, like, best ball MLB and how the season is going, but I just like haven't had, an outlet to discuss that with others, or see it discussed.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. We can also partially blame the football frenzy that everybody has already, but we're gonna be here on Stacking Dingers, putting together, talking through more of this sort of stuff and kind of going through plans more for how you might want to draft the seventh inning stretch coming up. Probably, I don't really have a set schedules, but stay tuned to this channel. We will be definitely covering more, and you can check out most Friday nights now until the start of the contest. I'll be doing live drafts on the sheep seats, so we'll always have that. So yeah, Brendan, thank you for joining me. It was awesome to catch up. And everyone else, thank you for watching this. So for Brendan and myself, have a good one.